It's not every day someone accidentally discovers 5 huge bars of gold inside of a tank, but that's exactly what happened here. But the owner who found those bars has one huge regret. I'll talk about that and so much more as we explore. It's not every day that you hear about somebody owning a tank, much less you yourself having one. But the owner of a tank that was used in the Iraq War, it had 5 big gold bars in it. But the owner of that tank is now having a big regret. And this is an image of the owner and his colleague finding the gold bars inside of this fuel tank. Now, if this story sounds somewhat familiar to you, well, you may have been a subscriber to my channel for quite some time. I actually covered this story when the news broke about this. Well, there is an update to this story. As shared with me by several members of the community, I'm going to be reporting from the Daily Mail about finding 2 million quid, that's pounds, of gold bars hidden inside of an Iraqi tank that I bought on eBay. That's right, he bought the tank on eBay. And but he's got some regrets because he wish he would not have handed them over, essentially because he didn't earn a thing on them. We're going to get into how this tank was found and how the gold was discovered here as a recap of what I did in a previous video. But a military buff who bought a tank on eBay and discovered 2 million pounds of gold bars hidden inside what he regrets handing in the hidden treasure. So he found these bars inside of the fuel tank, and it's pretty amazing how they were discovered. But how did they get in there in the first place? Well, we can only theorize, but we have some guesses as to what happened here. But before we go further in this, I think that this article is incorrect because I remember at the time it mentioned about 2 million pounds worth, at least some articles back in the day. The thing is depending on the exchange rates, that's about $2.45 million worth of gold. Well, if you calculate the weight of those bars, and I did watch his YouTube channel that talks about how they discovered them and the fact that it shows them actually discovering them out of the tank, pretty remarkable to see. It's about 885 ounces. Each of these bars weighs about 12 pounds, or a little bit more than 12 pounds each in these 5 bars. That's about 885 ounces. At today's prices, not 2017 prices, but at today's prices, that equates to about $1.8 million worth, maybe a little bit more. It's believed first Nick Mead is his name. He discovered the 5 gold bars stashed inside of the diesel tank of the ex-Iraqi Army Type 69, which is a Chinese copy of a Soviet T-55, back in 2017. It's believed the bullion was looted by plundering Iraqi soldiers during the 1990 invasion of Kuwait, but forgotten about inside of the 36.7-ton armored beast. How do you forget about that much gold? Well, likely if you're under a lot of gunfire and you have to abandon your tank, and it's more about your life than the gold, even that much gold. Stunned by the discovery, Mr. Mead handed the gold to the authorities. That talks about that in the video as to why he did that, because he could get in a lot of trouble if he didn't know how to melt that gold down. So it's kind of interesting to see his thought process behind that, which is totally understandable. Now, 6 years later, he has admitted he wished he had kept the hidden booty. And you know what? I don't blame him. He was 55 years old at the time. He's 62 now, and he runs tanks a lot on his farm in Helmden, Northamptonshire. And he told Mail Online that, "I regret handing it in. I should have at least got a finder's fee for it, but I got absolutely nothing." And I can't help but agree with him on that. And here's an image of Mr. Mead. He brought the tank after spotting it on eBay. He found the gold hidden inside of the diesel tank, and here's a screenshot from the video that shows the gold bars themselves. And look at that, it's just pretty amazing. That's the 4 that he brought out, but there was a 5th one that he pulled out as well. It was something else. Indeed. And here's the Chinese-made T-54 tank that was sold on eBay for around 30,000 pounds by Joe Hughes, pictured who bought it, ruined, and restored it. A young guy, I think he was 23 at the time. 5 gold bars, thought to have been stolen by Iraqi troops during the invasion of Kuwait, were found in the tank 6 years ago. It's pretty remarkable. When we found the gold bars, we didn't know what to do with them. It's not like you can take 5 gold bars down to the pawn shop. So we called the police. Of course, that's not what you would do anyway. You would melt them down, find a way to melt them down discreetly, if possible, which may not always be you may not have the ability to do that, because if you don't have the equipment yourself to make that happen, and then what do you do with the melted bars? Because when they're melted down again, well, there's no real way to tell they're genuine or not with no markings on them unless you have them tested and thoroughly tested. And most local coin shop worth their salt is going to be very questionable about those unmarked gold bars. You'd be very curious, especially if you brought in a slew of them after being melted down, much less the way these are. And by the way, these bars did not appear to be marked in any way, at least from what I could see from the video. Gold has a fingerprint. They know where it's been mined. It was definitely stolen from Kuwait, is what the quote here says. At the time, they were all these wonderful conspiracy theories claiming we had kept it, but I haven't gotten any money for it, sadly. See, again there, I think the only fingerprint really the gold has is the fact that it is in this bar form, this specific type of bar form, which is elongated. Again, we look at that picture, we can see exactly what we're talking about here. Let me see if I can open this up. We can't really zoom in on it, but and the video quality is not the best. The video quality is not better than what you see here. So you can see that these are poured bars in long casting displays there, casting ingots there, cast into this form with very rounded on the bottom side and rough textured. So they probably know the molds from which these were poured, but not really anything else in terms of stampings that I can see on them. I could be wrong. There may not be. There very well could be something else there that shows a very small stamping perhaps on it. I'm not sure. But anyways, Mr. Mead said he isn't sure what has happened to the gold since he turned it in, and believes authorities were still trying to track down the bullion's owners after all these years. At the time, these were all wonderful conspiracy theories as far as what people were thinking about it. In fact, they've even conspired about they've at least dreamed about what they would do with the money if they could keep them in a separate video. He says, I used to be a butcher. Had I known I would have gotten nothing for finding it, I would have got my knife and chopped a slice off and taken it to cash converters, he joked. Yes, and he literally could probably do that. Literally carve off a couple ends of the pieces there, but nonetheless, they would be able to know that had occurred if he turned them in. Said, well, what happened to these slices? We can tell it's new, gold freshly exposed from a blade. So nonetheless, Mr. Mead wanted to add the tank to his fleet of about 300 military vehicles stashed at his farm, where petrol heads get the chance to ride them. In some of them, he traded in an army lorry and an Abbott self-propelled gun for the tank in a deal worth about $30,000 after seeing it advertised on eBay. The vehicle was restored by the previous owner, Joe Hughes, 23 years old, who replaced its tracks and fixed its engine without ever discovering the valuable booty inside. Mr. Mead said he found machine gun ammunition while stripping it down and feared other weapons might have been stored inside the fuel tank. Worried, Nick and his mechanic, Todd Chamberlain, filmed the operation to prove where any hidden rifles may have come from if they stumbled across them. But instead, they pulled out the gold bars, which weighed 5 kilos each, actually about 5.5 kilos each, estimated worth about 2 million pounds. But that math is incorrect, unless my calculations are incorrect. That's only about $1.8 million worth. So there you have it, and here's a listing there. Speaking to The Sun at the time, Mr. Mead says, we know it is definitely an Iraqi tank, and our theory is the gold is from Kuwait, but we don't know. When we found it, we were all laughing and joking and deciding what we were going to spend the money on. My sister wanted a Land Rover, and I would buy a Rolls-Royce Phantom and chop the back off to make a pickup truck. The exact history of Mr. Hughes' tank is unknown, but an inspection revealed it is a Chinese copy of a Russian T-55 tank, designed and manufactured under the designation Type 69. It's built in the early 80s and has just about 1,507 miles on the clock. The vehicle was first bought by the self-taught mechanic who has been restoring military vehicles for 7 years. He purchased the vehicle without a working engine and tracks, but managed to get the tank running again. I saw it advertised, and I had this idea of doing a From Russia with Love experience where people would come and drive 3 Russian tanks. I always keep an eye on military vehicles on eBay. I check it once every 3 days. I often sell tanks on eBay, and I buy from them too. It's unusual to get one of these now, and they range from around 10K pounds to 60,000 quid. I did well buying it for 30,000, according to Nick there. Meanwhile, 2 officers from Northamptonshire Police took the bars away for investigation and handed him a receipt, which is now being kept in a safety deposit box in London. It is thought inquiries will be made in Kuwait to see if the gold can be matched to any bullion where it was stolen during Iraq's invasion in August of 1990. It's all very much up in the air at the moment, Mr. Mead said. It's very early days, and I'm not sure what will happen yet. He added that he was unsure if he would receive a finder's percentage, but Mr. Mead does not seem bothered that 2 million pounds might have just slipped through his fingers. He said the chances of us keeping it are very slim. I've had quite a few strange phone calls. I got a call from one person claiming to be a colonel in the British Army saying it was his. It's really good fun to have found it. It certainly is interesting. Well, it sounds like he's taking it all in stride, but probably he is certainly being truthful in that he probably would have found some way to liquidate that gold, held on to it and found some other way to kind of chop it up and melt it down, sold it bit by bit, piece by piece in due course. So there you go. Let me know what your thoughts are. A fascinating story indeed. And thanks again to the several members of the community who sent me this article about this news. And I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.